For my nonverbal communication guide, I focused on Mexican culture and American culture. The first point, kinesthetics, which is body language and gestures someone uses during conversation. In Differences in Nonverbal Communication Style Between Cultures, the Latino Anglo Perspective by William Cruz, he explains how in Mexico, people will often pucker their lips to point at something. So whenever they would ask, hey, can you go get me that over there? They'll just use their lips to point instead of their finger. This comes with a warning because they're not trying to kiss you, they're not trying to make an advance to you, they're not blowing kisses at a random object, they're pointing at it, and it's very different than in America whenever we just use our fingers. Another point that I found very interesting was that it's considered distant and not disrespectful, but just distant and formal whenever you verbally thank someone in Mexico. Oftentimes whenever you go to a cashier, they'll just smile at you, and whenever you leave, you would just smile back at them. I find this very interesting because I know whenever I go out to eat or whenever I'm going shopping, I always say thank you and I give them a smile and have a good day. And it's not seen as disrespectful in Mexico, but it's seemed as you're putting a wall of distance between you and the person you're communicating with by being so formal. The second point, which is proximechanics, which is how close you stand whenever you're conversing. Again, from William Cruz, he explains how Mexicans stand much closer to each other whenever they converse than Americans. In America, the average distance is about 18 to 33 inches, while in Mexico, it's 8 to 18 inches. So even on the far end for Mexicans, it's on the very close end for an American. And that comes with problems because as a Mexican, you may feel that the American is trying to be distant from you and trying to stay away from you, while as an American, you may feel like the Mexican is encroaching on your personal space. The third point, haptics, which is communication via touch. And Americans in Mexico, learning the language is not learning the culture, by W.M. Todd McKillis. Again, this goes with the closeness that Mexicans have with one another. They are considered a very touchy people, but it's not to encroach upon your personal space. It's to show friendliness and a willingness to converse and be nice to one another. So oftentimes whenever they embrace each other, they'll kiss each other on the cheeks. They're very touchy with each other. While in America, a handshake is much more appropriate unless you're really, really close with the person or their family, in which case a hug might suffice. The fifth point, chronomechanics, which is how you treat people in accordance to time. Again, from W.M. Todd McKinnis. Preferential treatment is often given to the elders, and while we do have a respect your elders type of society here in the United States, in Mexico it's very often that an elderly person will be treated upon before you at like a barbershop or something, and it's just a sign of respect, which we do have in the United States, but in Mexico it's a little bit more. The sixth point, which is physical appearance and attire, I focused on going to church because a large percentage of Mexicans are Catholic, and we do have a lot of Catholics here in the United States. I found it interesting because in both places, they do expect you to dress up very formally for church, and it kind of shows the bridge that we can have between societies thanks to things like religion. Both in Mexico and the United States, they don't really want you going to church in tank tops or shorts. They want you to dress up in your Sunday's best whenever you go. And this is in accordance to Borderland Saints, Secular Sanity in Chicano and Mexican Culture by Desiree A. Martin. The seventh point, which is communication with where your eye placement is. This is from William Cruz. Anglos typically maintain steady eye contact whenever they're communicating with each other, and that's to show that they are listening and they're invested to what you were trying to say, while Mexicans tend to make eye contact, then they'll let their eyes wander a little bit, they'll bring it back, and then they'll let their eyes wander a little bit more. And it's not a sign of they're not listening to you or their mind is in la la land. It's just they don't maintain constant eye contact because it can seem that it can be construed that you are challenging them or you are being threatening towards them if you maintain constant eye contact with them during a conversation. And the last point, which is odors, which is pointed out in Americans in Mexico learning the language is not learning the culture again. Using fragrances to display how important someone or something is to you is common in both cultures. So whenever I go to work, I put on deodorant and I'll go. I don't put on cologne. I don't try to make myself all pretty because I'm going there to go sweat in a warehouse. I'm not there to look impressive for anyone. It's the same thing in Mexican culture, where if you're going out to see your family and people you care about and people you love, you're going to want to look your best. You want to dress up. You're going to want to smell nice. But if you're just going down to the store, you're not going to put on your $100 perfume to go down there. And that is my presentation, I believe.